Hi, this is Andrew Cooper from Advice for Living Financial Planning in Diamond Creek. This is our first video newsletter. We thought you might find it a little more interesting than our printed documents. We certainly would like your feedback on whether you think it's a good idea or whether you would prefer the printed edition. In terms of markets, the situation on the Australian and American stock markets seems to have eased a bit. We saw those couple of initial drops a few weeks ago, but since then both markets have recovered a good deal of their losses, and their volatility, which is how much the market goes up and down each day, appears to have eased. As at last night, the American market is down just 5% from where it was a month ago, and the Australian market is down only 1.8% from its highs of about a month ago. So as you can see, a good deal of the losses that were incurred in those initial couple of days of panic have largely been recovered. I still expect that in the weeks and months to come, the market will remain unsettled, and there'll be probably days where it's down a bit more than usual and other days where it's up a bit more than usual. On the whole, we're expecting the short term to be largely sort of sideways, but with some gradual upward increases in the market. Even on those days where we do see substantial drops, my advice remains the same. Don't panic and don't sell. The underlying economics are still very good in America. Unemployment is low, inflation is low, and business confidence is very high, particularly since their recent tax cuts. In Australia, the situation is largely the same, so there's no reason to fear a market crash. In terms of currency, the Australian dollar has been moving in a range between about 78 and 81 cents American. I'd expect this will remain largely as it is unless we see a dramatic increase in interest rates from the US Federal Reserve. They have already indicated that market rates will go up a little bit, so we should expect maybe the dollar to probably drop. Generally what happens is when interest rates in America are ahead of Australia, then the Australian dollar generally drops. Having said that, currencies is not something we can control, and so generally it's not an area we worry about that much because we can't do much with it. What we do in terms of your portfolios to guard against currency fluctuations is in terms of international shares. We generally have a mix between international shares that are in Australian dollars and international shares in American dollars. That way, whichever way the currency goes, the effects are mitigated. So if you're, so as I say, if the Australian dollar goes up, then that part of your portfolio, which is in Australian dollars, generally goes up. If the American dollar goes up, then that part of your portfolio in American dollars goes up. The other item I wanted to touch on briefly is insurance premiums. Over the last year, insurance premiums have in some cases gone up fairly substantially. This is due to two reasons. One is a number of insurance companies have changed hands, and I suspect that they've been putting premiums up in order to bump the sale prices. And secondly, there's been a surge in mental illness claims, and that's affected particularly income protection and total and permanent disability premiums. So what we're doing is we're encouraging people, when your insurance is due for renewal, we are encouraging all to have a review so we can look and see whether maybe not we can reduce some of your cover if you don't need as much. Or alternately, what we're also doing now is we're looking at other insurance providers to see if we can get you a better deal. I normally don't like to move people between insurers all the time, and in fact the market has gathered a fairly bad name for some practices where people are flipped every year, and so the government has actually put in some legislation to stop that happening. So having said that, those of you that have had your insurance for quite some time, if we can get a better deal elsewhere, then I'll certainly be suggesting that to you. I'm conscious that there is some annoyance in that you have to go through underwriting again, but we are finding that there can be some quite substantial differences between the insurers that maybe in the past wasn't there. So if you're happy to go through that underwriting process again, then we're certainly going to look at recommending alternate providers if we can get you a better deal. And finally, on a personal note, I'm very pleased to tell you that my wife Alison has returned to the office after an absence of almost 15 months while she underwent breast cancer treatment. I'm happy to say that she was finally given the all clear last week, and so she's returning to the office as our practice manager. During Alison's absence, you will have dealt with our daughter-in-law, Jessica, who jumped in to fill a vacancy at very short notice, and we thank her very much for that. Now, with Alison returning, we weren't able to keep Jessica on full time, but I'm pleased to say that she secured another position very quickly and an excellent job at another financial planning practice. Some would say perhaps not quite as good as ours, but certainly a very good practice, and I expect to see her progressing in the industry in the years to come. While Alison is back in the office, she'll only be working 4 days a week, and she'll be taking Wednesdays off. On that day, her place will be taken by our sister-in-law, Marlene, so we're still keeping the practice very much in the family. So that's all for today. We'd like to hear your feedback on whether you prefer a written newsletter or the video, or if alternately you'd rather not hear anything from us. And if that's the case, then just send us an email and say unsubscribe. If there are particular topics you'd like me to cover in future videos, then please let me know. And of course, if there is any questions or any concerns you have, then please give us a call or send us an email. Otherwise, thanks for watching and have a great week.